All right, good evening, everybody. It's 5 o'clock, and I'd like to call to order the Bloomington Historic Preservation Commission meeting for Thursday, October 22nd. Thank you for everybody coming this evening. All right, Connor, we need to do call to order. So Dee, are you with us?
I'm here.
All right.
Doug Bruce. Sam DeSaller.
Here.
Susan Dyer.
Here.
Jeff Golden.
Here.
Deb Hutton.
Here.
Lee Sandweiss.
Here.
John Saunders.
Yes.
Chris Sturbaum.
That's good.
Chris Sturbaum.
Here you go, Chris.
I'm here.
Okay, good. And we have Ernesto with us,
Yes, here.
and Jenny, Derek, or Duncan. All right. We need an approval of our minutes.
So moved. Just
Second.
check.
Perfect. Dee,
Sam DeSaller.
Deb Hutton.
Yes.
Susan Dyer.
Yes.
Jeff Golden.
Yes.
Deb Hutton.
Yes. Sorry for getting out of order.
Lee Sandweiss. John Saunders.
yes.
Chris Sturbaum.
Yes.
Excellent.
Carried.
Okay, let's move on to COA, and this will be 20-45, 326 South Fairview Street, Greater Prospect Hill District.
So the request is for the demolition of an ancillary structure on the lot. Research indicates it was historically used as a stable. The primary structure is rated as contributing. However, when I was reading the survey entry on the shard, it doesn't make any mention of this ancillary structure. So that was interesting. So I believe it was built circa 1910, and that is because the 1907 Sanborn map, which you see on the left here, shows a vacant lot. The 1913 Sanborn map has the primary structure and the ancillary structure. The X, the cross, indicates a stable. So the Sanborn maps do show us what these structures were used for. And if you can't, you might be able to see there's a D on this one, which means dwelling. So that's where I came to that conclusion. So the structure is part of the neighborhood fabric that survives from a time that before the automobile transformed society. And as such, it really is a curiosity and part of the heritage of the district's built environment. That said, the dilapidated nature of the structure means restoration would be expensive. The current owner has no use for the structure and believes its poor condition could eventually cause bodily harm. Staff would recommend approval of COA 2045, which, by the way, is a demolition of this structure. While the preservation of the structure would contribute towards the pre-automobile history of the neighborhood, the dilapidated condition of the structure would make such a project extraordinarily expensive and very unlikely to actually happen. I did get feedback from the Neighborhood Design Review Committee, all in favor, all three of them, in favor of supporting the demolition of this structure.
Okay, great. Is Janice Price with us?
Yes, I am.
Oh, great. Do you have any additional information for us before we get to questions?
No, I've only lived here a year and a half, and I moved from California, so I wasn't really even aware of the barn. Like you said, I don't have a great use for it. It's nice to have an area to park, and I don't know whether there's a way to preserve that sort of side structure, or whether I could put a carport in there or something like that.
Okay.
Oh, there's my house.
Yes. All right, thank you. Chris, do you have questions?
Yeah, could Connor show a few more of the pictures from those are the best pictures of it.
Right. I have a really great one with sunflowers.
There are a few that really show its condition.
You see the south wall is.
Oh my God.
That's what I got.
Okay, Chris, any more questions?
No.
All right, great. Jeff, do you have questions?
No question.
Deb, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Lee?
Questions?
All right. Susan?
No, no questions.
All right. Sam?
No questions.
I don't have any questions. I've actually seen this structure, and I know the condition of it. So let's move on to comments. Chris, do you have any comments?
It's historically interesting, and I hope everyone got to see it. We used to store in this barn and filled it to the gills, and we repaired it while we were using it, but we've been out of there for years, and the roof failed, the ridge is sagging, and you'd basically be building a new barn if you tried to save it, and that could be cool, but where's the budget, right?
Got it. All right, Jeff, comments?
Yeah, so I own the house across the street from this house, and I've walked by that barn many a time. And over the years, it's just gotten worse and worse. So I'm going to support the demolition of this.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Deb, do you have any comments?
No comment, thanks.
And Lee, do you have any comments?
No, I do not.
Susan?
No, I don't either.
Sam?
No comments.
Ernesto?
No comments, John. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't have any comments on this. No. Do we have any public comments? Okay. As I said, I've seen this building and unfortunately, it really does have to go away. So I will need a motion.
Move to approve COA 20-45.
In a second.
I'll
Second,
second it.
Great. Dee, will you take the roll?
Em DeSaller,
Yes.
Susan Dyer,
Yes.
Jeff Golden,
Yes.
Deb Hutton,
yes.
Lisa Sandwise, Sean Saunders,
Yes.
Chris Sturbaum.
Yes?
Motion carried 7-0-0.
Terrific. Thank
Hey,
you.
can I ask that whoever's not speaking, mute your mic? We're getting some feedback from an unmuted mic, so please check to make sure your mic is muted. Thank you.
All right. So let's move on to demolition delay. And we'll start out with 20-23.
So
Maxwell, sorry.
20-24, this is 702 East Maxwell Lane. The request is substantial demolition. It's actually the proposal to add a shed roof addition on top of the existing structure. You can see it here in this graphic. I got together with planning. We decided this met the definition of a substantial demolition, which is why we're seeing it today. This is a contributing home. Staff would recommend releasing demo delay 2024. While the addition is quite radical and not something that would be compatible in a historic district, staff does not find the project merits historic designation of the property.
Terrific. All right. Okay.
I did want to point out also, I was there to photograph it. Here's a side view of it. There is a ancillary building in the back. The petitioner plans to keep that. That will not be demolished or altered. And then I found two other structures that were architecturally twins just behind this one, 905 South Fest and 904 South Fest, which I thought was quite interesting. These are what we call the minimal traditional or the American small house that were, a lot of these went up post World War II as part of, FHA loans and things like that. So that's what this structure is in itself. So I just wanted to have that.
Okay, thank you, Connor. So let's move to questions. Chris? Chris, you're on the meeting.
Is this individual residence?
Is this an individual residence? Does someone live here currently? Is that the question?
No, is it going to be a individual's home, or is this something else that's going to be an apartment or something?
No, I believe the zoning requires single family home.
Okay, was there any discussion of compatibility when this came up?
Discussion between who?
Between planning, between preservation? Did that word come up at all?
No. The original addition was going to be to the rear and to the side, but that didn't meet setback requirements. So to get the extra space, he had to go on top. As far as I know, planning, this is okay in their book. It meets all requirements from the planning perspective. I spoke briefly with the petitioner on the design. He's proud of it. I didn't see it my place to disparage the architectural merits of the project. So the idea of compatibility, the discussion there did not take place because this is a demolition delay and this is not a design review.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Jeff?
No questions.
Thank you. Deb?
So just confirming, it's contributing. It has been designated as contributing, but it's not in a historic conservation or historic district, right?
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Lee?
I don't have any questions.
All right. Susan?
No, I don't either.
Sam?
No questions.
Ernesto?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, I haven't got anything to add to this, so let's move to comments.
Yes,
Chris?
I find it tragic that planning couldn't figure out a way to allow them to build in back, which was their initial desire. And there was no offer to go to the BZA. There was no offer to work things out. I don't know if they were under, was it 2 feet that they needed or 5 feet, or is there a planner here that could answer that question?
Keegan should be with us, although I don't see him. So there is not currently a planner in the meeting.
It's just that sometimes those well-intended rules drive things in a way that have unintended consequences. You know, maybe you're saving some square footage of absorption ground, but exceptions really should be much more easy to get than planning driving this to be built on top, which is probably more expensive, and it disrupts the architecture of the house and the neighborhood, and all because of some lot coverage rule that could have been waived in a condition of one lot. So I just find this unfortunate. And I'm sorry that I can't get an answer from a planner. Maybe the owner knows what it was that the planners wouldn't allow. And I'd be interested if anyone knows that answer.
Paul, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Do you have an answer to Chris Erbaum's question?
Yeah, I think the issue was the main issue. There was a rear setback that was within a few feet, and then there was a garage where the existing garage is at. There was going to be a new garage attached to the house, and that garage had to sit I think it was 10 feet back from the existing house, which pushed it back too far to make the design feasible. So that's how we ended up here.
Well, my sympathies. I'm sorry it had to go that way. I see what you're doing and I understand it. But those are my comments. I would like there to be a way for us to communicate better with planning so we could possibly advocate for the homeowner when they run into these unintended consequences of well-intended zoning rules.
Absolutely, Chris. All right, Jeff, comments?
No comments.
Okay. And Deb,
Comments, thanks.
Lee,
I agree with Chris, and I live around the corner from this house, and I've seen very sensitive expansions of houses on Maxwell Lane, East Maxwell Lane. And it's unfortunate that we weren't able to work with planning to make something else happen.
thank you, Lee. Susan,
No, I don't have any comments.
thank you. Sam,
I guess the only comment I have is from a constructability standpoint, in that you're so close to coming to the edge of that gable, and just in terms of waterproofing and the structural gymnastics you have to go through to get where you are. I might encourage you to just go the extra 2 feet and lop off the gables on each side, because there's not that much left there, and then that opens up a lot of fenestration possibilities on the short elevations, because I don't think there's a setback issue with the scheme as it is now.
thank you, Sam. Ernesto,
Yes, I agree with both last comments. I wish there would be some more flexibility in those cases from planning for a project like this, because this is going to cost probably more than if you expand towards the back. And lastly, what just Sam mentioned, I would suggest, why not just use the entire footprint to preserve that little sliver at each end? It represents, just from the construction perspective, is going to be just a challenging thing to resolve. Water leaking, all kinds of things, just for saving that little sliver of roof. I don't know. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
all right, thank you, Ernesto. Unlike you guys, I kind of like this design. I think it kind of helps change the look in a lot of ways that I think we'll probably see more coming up. When people can't expand, they're going to need to go up. So I'm not opposed to the demolition on this project. So we're going to need a motion.
I was going to do it, but I can't find it.
I'll go ahead and read it then. Today, regarding the property at 702 East Maxwell Lane, the Historic Preservation Commission declares that it got notice of proposed demolition, partial demolition, and after today's discussion, sees no need to review the plans any further, and waives the rest of the demolition delay waiting period. The HPC may later recommend the property for historic designation to the Common Council. Okay.
Second.
Thank you. Dee, roll call?
Okay, Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Susan Dyer,
Yes.
Jeff Golden,
Yes.
Deb Hutton,
Yes.
Lee Sandweiss,
Yes.
Sean Saunders,
Yes. That's next one.
Chris Sturbaum.
I will pass, just in the hope of sending a signal that we need to communicate more with planning on these issues and offer ourselves even as advocates for Board of Zoning appeals as needed. I understand things aren't design guidelines, but I do think that we can help make things work a little better if we are willing to try and break that bridge between planning and preservation.
Thank you, Chris. All right, let's move on to new business.
John,
Yes.
before we move into the first item of business and new business, I'd like to say that I've got some information today of a very sensitive nature that could have a substantial effect on this designation, historic designation. And I'm hoping that you guys will trust me. And I'd like to table this until the next meeting. I was hoping I would get some more substantial support for this information. I don't want to reveal it because it is very sensitive. I would like to wait another 2 weeks before we talk about this.
All right.
So I'll just say that if we wait 2 weeks, then this demolition delay will be released because it'll meet the 90-day threshold. And this is our last opportunity, unless we want to call a special meeting before October 30th, to place the property under interim protection.
So, Chris?
That puts me in a very difficult situation because this could sully some reputations.
Well, our role, if we forward it to the council for designation today, perhaps that information would be unfolded a little more by the time council gets to it, and then council can take that into their consideration on whether or not they're going to designate.
And everybody will know.
I don't see how they won't know.
Yeah, I think
This is a
Public meetings.
yeah, our meetings are public. We'd have to publish it anyway, whichever way we go.
Right. But we're not quite as public as the council meetings are public. I understand the rules, so I guess we don't have a choice in that matter. I'm not sure how to move forward.
Does
Do you want a private conversation, Jeff, with phoning Connor on your cell phone out of the room?
I talked to John about it. He knows what it is. I'm assuming that John talked to Connor.
We have, and I think that for us to move forward, we need to have something more solid, something that's actually in writing, not just, and I trust Jeff, don't get me wrong, but I think we need
Right.
something more.
Right. And that's the reason I'm not saying it, because it's hearsay.
Right, exactly. So, if it's the commissioner's desire to postpone it for 2 weeks, we could, but I kind of agree with Connor on the other hand that we should move it forward and then let city council make that decision. Because we've already made the decision to send it to city council or to common council.
No, we've only made the decision to start the official designation proceedings. I've written a staff report, which I hope you guys are able to read. I outlined the exact historic criteria that this building and architectural criteria this building meets, and I explained why it meets those criteria. That's what I'll bring to council if you decide today to forward it to council. I also sent property owner notification to the adjacent property owners and the property owner themselves that we will be having this meeting today, where we may be taking that action. We may be sending it to council and placing it under interim protection. So all of our legal bases have been covered. We're fueled and ready to go.
So let's get some commissioner comments. Chris?
Commissioner comments, I recommend that we move to send this to the council and initiate interim protection.
Okay. Lee?
I agree with Chris. Move to council, interim protection.
Okay. Susan?
Yeah, I'd say with the information we have, sorry, Jeff, I do trust you. If it were less than the 2 weeks, or if we had more time, I'd be happy to table it.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Deb?
Well, I didn't support this in the first place, and now I'm very leery of this whole deal and what it could do to the Boxman's reputation. And this is a big part of this, you know, the historic nature of this appeal is the restaurant and the Boxmans themselves. And yeah, so I'm not going to support, I'm going to not support forwarding this.
All right, thank you. Deb?
I'm with the others and how Susan laid it out, that in the absence of more concrete information from you, Jeff, or whatever other sources, in spite of totally trusting you, but needing to see it, I do support our decision and vote that we made last time until there is further information. Thanks.
Terrific. Sam?
I have no comments.
Ernesto?
No comments, thank you.
I think that at this point, we should go ahead and move it forward to the Common Council and let them make our decision.
Hey guys, this is Josh Alley. I do have a couple of questions. Am I allowed to talk?
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. I was just getting around to you.
And then my business partner, Craig, is here as well with me. We're in the same room or whatever. And a couple of things. We did find the original deed to this building, and the original owner wasn't the Mitchell family at all. It was a fellow named Fred W. Rumpel, and he was the original owner of the building. He's the one that had the building constructed. And then he sold it to an Ira Mitchell in 1929. So I know we have the picture up on the screen right now, the 1928 picture there. And the Mitchells didn't even own, it's an Ira Mitchell that purchased the property from Mr. Rumpel. He purchased it in 1929. And so I just got this deed today. And so I'll forward it to you, Connor, that way you have it. But I think it adds further evidence that the Mitchells weren't the original constructors of the building. And if you look at the deed, they only owned it for 6 years. Ira Mitchell did. And then they sold it to, they either sold it or it got foreclosed on and it went to a bank. And so we'll share that with you guys to have. And then the only other request that we ask from the attorney's comments earlier, the city attorney, that this had to be an all or nothing process, even though we were willing to work with you guys. That's kind of the way we went on this. And we just asked that if you move it to the council and you're going to forward something for designation, that you take it back to the front facade of the 1928 building, because the things change so much. And if we're going to be asked to take a building back to its original look, we'd request that it be the front facade of the 1928 picture that's on the screen now.
Josh, I think you misunderstand how this process works. So if this building is designated by the council, there is no ordinance or law in effect that's going to force you to restore the building back to any time period whatsoever. We're just designating the building as it's, as a whole and not a facade. So, and also to add to your comment about the deed, I also have deeds that show the lot was purchased by Stanley Mitchell in 1922 and then Ira Mitchell in 1924. And it was actually purchased one half of the lot, and then he subsequently bought the other half of the lot for $5,000 a piece. So I'd love to share, notes and stuff and see what our deeds look like and what the information looks like at a further time.
Yeah, we have our deed from our attorney. He sent it in just a little bit ago, and it shows that they paid $7,500 for it back in 1929. We already know the building was existing in 1928. at the time, and we know that Rumpel owned it back in 1928. So I'm not sure how we get that information to you, but are we designating this based on a restaurant that was there for 30 years, or are we basing this on the fact that the Mitchells actually owned it or built it, and that's what you're trying to say?
I think all of that.
Okay, so will this be the first restaurant ever designated as historic in Monroe County, just based on the fact that that was a restaurant that was standing?
I do not know that.
Well, that's what we're asking, because you said you had multiple reasons to designate this historic. One of them was based on the Mitchells. We believe that we have enough proof here to debunk that it was a Mitchell building. So then it sounds like you guys are designating this due to a Boxman's restaurant, which has never to my best of my knowledge, has never happened in Monroe County before, based on someone's owning a restaurant in town, tagging that historic. Is that correct?
I did note that in my previous presentation at the October 8th meeting, and I said that that's a shame, that maybe this is something that we should recognize moving forward.
Did you guys understand our situation? I mean, it's not in a historic community. It was never tagged historic. We go ahead and buy the building. Never has ever in the history been a building tagged historic based on a restaurant. So now you guys are tagging this something new that's never happened before, without us being able to know that before our purchase. And we now believe that the building never belonged to, or was never a Mitchell building. So now it's on new grounds of being something that has never happened before. And again, we're not builders. We're just two working guys in Bloomington. We've never built a thing in our lives. We never knew in a million years that we'd be the first time that this would ever happen to a place based on a restaurant that happened to be here for 30 years, because there's so many restaurants that have been around for over 30 years. To base one, that means that you're going to be able to tag a ton of restaurants in Bloomington based on the fact that they've been here 30 years.
Yeah, I mean,
I think you're missing part of the point. Part of the point is the architecture. So the history of the building is important. The architecture is important. And it's a law that's on the books that protects buildings that have been architecturally designated as at least contributing. So that's why this all came up. And that law is, it is in effect, and it affects real estate.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just we're in a new place where we've never been. We agree. I think Chris Sturbaum was wanting us to do something a couple meetings ago, and we agreed that we'd be willing to do that. But then you guys brought it to your attorney, city attorney, and at that time your city attorney said it's all or nothing. You either have to tag it historic, or you have to let them tear it down. So that kind of took away what we were willing to work with you guys on, because if it's all or none, if you guys are saying, hey, we're willing to work with you guys on the front, we're willing to do, we'd like to stay with the 1928 style. But I think most of you guys all agreed that the inside of the building and the majority of the building was pretty bad shape. And multiple times I heard many of you guys say, if we could just do something with the front of the building, even Boxman's grandson or son said the same thing. If we could save part of just a little part of it, that would be awesome. But he understood that the building in itself was in bad shape. I'm sorry I talked too long, and I'm done.
Josh, is perfectly fine, because we really do want your input. Deb, you have some questions or comments? Deb?
Yeah, sorry. A question probably for Connor and those who know stuff better. If can a building been built by one person or one group like the Mitchells, and yet owned by another like the Rebels?
Yes, that is a possibility. The Mitchells could have been hired, the Rebels could have hired the Mitchells to build the building. That could have happened.
I don't see that likely in this case though, because if the Ruppels merely hired the Mitchells as a construction hands, then why is the M on the top of the building?
Connor, you said in the last meeting that Boxman's son said the M even stood for mortgage.
Yeah, it was a joke. It was in jest. That was in his email. He said that's something his dad joked about. But
that in the picture in the lower left-hand corner, there's obviously no M there.
Yeah, it could have been painted. I don't know in that picture.
I mean, that's convenient.
So, yeah.
All right, Sam, do you have any comments?
I have no comments.
All right. Any other commissioners want to bring up some points? Okay, hearing none.
Wait. I don't think I had a comment yet.
All right, Chris.
There are many ways to do many things. And before there was a local designation in the downtown, if I remember right, the Princess Theater worked with Indiana Landmarks and preserved their facade. And that Indiana Landmark still preserves the facade of the Indiana Theater, and everything behind it when that theater had burned was rebuilt. So even if this is heading to the council, petitioner could work something out with Indiana Landmarks with a facade, and that facade could possibly be protected, and it might influence how the council responds to an all or nothing, ultimatum, which may not be the right answer for this building. Like, again, rules force some things to happen that nobody really wants to, like in our last situation. There are ways to work around some of these things, and I'm throwing that out there. I'm going to support sending this to council, but there are ways to get this still happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I was under the same impression with the theater as well. So, hearing no more objections, and our commission is in favor of moving forward to common council. So, resolution to forward a recommendation for property to get historic designation to the common council. Today, the HPC declares that the property located at 424 and a half meets the following criteria for local designation referred to in the staff report, which is the history of the property, what are the three? Actually, I didn't write them down here.
All right, it's criteria 1A.
1A. All right, thank you. Has significant character, interest, or value as a part of the development, heritage, or cultural characteristics of the city, state, or nation, or is associated with a person who played a significant role in local, state, or national history. Number 2, architectural, embodies distinguished characteristics of their architectural or engineering type, or is the work of a designer whose individual work has significantly influenced the development of the community, or is the work of a designer of such prominence that such work gains its value from the designer's reputation, or contains elements of design, detailed materials, or craftsmanship which represents a significant innovation, or contains any architectural style, detail, or other element in danger of being lost, or owning its unique location, physical characteristics, represents an established and familiar visual feature of the city, exemplifies the built environment in an area of history characterized by distinctive architectural style. And I don't see number 3. And historical,
No, just consequently.
yeah. Consequently, the HPC recommends its historic designation under Title 8 of the Bloomington Municipal Code to the Common Council with the attached map. And we need that as a motion, which I made.
Dee, can you call the roll?
To approve.
Okay, Sam DeSaller,
I'll second if we need a second.
Yep.
Sam, are you awake?
Sam DeSaller,
No.
Susan Dyer,
Yes.
Jeff Golden,
No.
Deb Hutton,
Yes.
Lee Sandweiss,
Lee, one more time.
Yes.
Lee, yes, John
Yes.
Saunders,
Yes.
okay. John Saunders,
Yes.
Chris Sturbaum,
Yes.
motion carries 5-2-0.
Okay. Interim protection. Resolution to place interim protection on a property that has been sent to the Common Council with recommendation of local historic designation. Today, after a vote, the HPC recommends that the Common Council locally designate the property at 424 and a half as historic and places the property under interim protection pending action by the Common Council under BMC 8.08.015. I'm sorry, 424 and a half South Bloomington Street.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, Dee, let's take the roll.
Sam DeSaller,
No.
Susan Dyer,
Yes.
Jeff Golden,
No.
Deb Hutton,
Yes.
Lee Sandweiss,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Chris Sturbaum,
Yes.
motion carried 5-2-0.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to near West Side design guidelines.
Yeah, so I've been meeting, and Deb as well. Deb, thank you so much for all these Thursdays. It's every other Thursday, we don't have a commission meeting. We've been meeting with the neighbors of the Near West Side, the Design Guideline Committee, and we've been working on these design guidelines for going on about 10 months. So we really came to a conclusion here, and I wanted to get them polished up and sent to you guys. They're happy with them. They sent them out to the neighborhood to get feedback or objections. None was heard. So, you know, I think this gets the green light unless one of you found something egregious as you were reviewing it.
Okay.
Move to approve the guidelines.
I have some issues I'd like to talk through.
Sure.
This looks to me to be the most restrictive set of guidelines we've seen since Elm Heights. So there's a couple of places in here where I'm afraid I marked them all up. Some of it's legibility issues. Some of it's like the intention of the guidelines. There's one part in here that says that the guidelines don't apply to any existing building underneath the purpose somewhere. Is that? I don't know if it's worth doing this here or if I should send these comments to Connor and get them resolved that way. I don't know if it's worth taking up the time of the entire commission, but there are a bunch of, some of them are nitpicky things, but some of them are like issues like, you know, can you use the type of roofing that are approved are only metal and asphalt shingle, which precludes doing sort of additions in the back with a rolled roof, stuff like that. So is that okay with these guys? Have they sort of looked at that? But you know, how do you want to run this, I guess is the question.
I think if you have any questions about things like that, I could answer those.
All right. So one larger sort of structural issue is that these reference the zoning. And if the zoning changes, all the references in this document become confusing. So what was the impetus behind referencing specific current zoning?
That's the zoning that the design guidelines, it's R3 is what you're talking about. It's what the neighborhood is currently zoned. At least the majority of it. There's some different zoning along Kirkwood that the guidelines do address. I know the current proposal wants to rezone it R4. The committee members are highly against the R4 zoning and wished that their districts would maintain the standards set forth in R3, which is why you see those zoning standards in the guidelines.
Right. I guess that my big concern here is that these are neighborhood guidelines which don't necessarily want to be referencing zoning. I think they should reference particular areas within the neighborhood, like they call out, you know, the transit corridors and wanting to treat those differently than the core of the neighborhood. But pulling out the zoning as a direct reference concerns me. And I don't know if that resonates with anybody else. If it doesn't, then I'll not worry about it.
It does with me, and I withdraw my motion.
Very good. Any more questions, Sam?
So I marked this sucker up, and I lost my markups because of a lovely electronic blah, blah, blah. So just a sort of a graphic concern on page 9 of 46, the legibility of what buildings are notable, what are outstanding, what are contributing, what are non-contributing. The key is very legible. The buildings themselves are outlined in a color, but the colors are close enough that it's very difficult to tell what buildings are what on that. And so I think that could lead to some confusion, and I think that's worth addressing before we approve them.
So Sam, that's really kind of, we're working within limitations as far as size and image quality. And if you look at the other guidelines, you know, certainly no other districts are as large as this one. So producing an image that can fit on a page and produce the quality you're speaking of is proven so far to be almost impossible. You know, I hope that the main point of the map is so people understand where the district is. And if they have questions about the individual ratings, that's something that, you know, they can call me or, you know, go to the website. The city website has the table on there as well.
I hear that. I'm just saying, if you're not going to reference that information on the map, pull it, because it's frustrating looking at this thing. I get the boundary. You know, it's just graphically confusing, and so I have issues with that.
Okay. You know, Sam, I think you're probably right. Maybe we should just table this for today and bring it up at our next meeting when you have a chance to get the documentation over to Connor and to Deb so they can review it as well. But,
okay, I'm happy to write this up and I'll send it to Connor, and if you want to distribute it around, that's I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
is that an agreement with the rest of our commissioners?
I also find it's an interesting argument that Sam makes about not referencing current, past, or unknown future zoning because things can change, but rather referencing areas of their neighborhood that will bypass any new zoning or past zoning references. And so I think that's a good point. Thanks, Sam.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, they could easily just talk about compatibility and with the existing neighborhood and have the same effect and transcend the zoning, which I understand is much of the core much of the core is proposed to go to R4. I think nobody knows that yet, but that's the new map. And it's just in contradiction to what the council did and what the public spoke to before in the last meeting when the UDO was adopted. But that's, they could do it in a more graceful way.
So I just want to speak to why they did that. I was at all these meetings. I think one of the big complaints that people have about guidelines is they're a little too subjective, a little too easy to manipulate. And so for property owners, they like to see these hard numbers like 6 foot side setbacks in this area. Like that is palatable for them and easy to understand. When we take all that out of the guidelines, it leaves too much subjectivity up to the commission, which is why the neighborhood wanted these in there.
Right, but I hear what you're saying, but there's none of those numbers in there. It references the zoning, but you don't say, oh, I want a 6 foot fence. So if you want those numbers, put them directly in there.
They are in there.
A reminder, it's a conservation district, which means everybody can do about anything with existing structures. But if you tear down something and want to build new, you face the guidelines.
That's not how they read to me. So, and that's another one of my concerns. So I'll write it up.
I think that's factual by ordinance.
All right, I didn't hear what you said, Chris.
Did you say you didn't hear what I said?
Correct. Could you repeat it?
Yeah. Conservation district guidelines only apply to new construction.
Yeah.
It's a weakness of the conservation district that you can add 100 giant pumpkins to your house if you want to. It only reviews new construction after, if you demolish and you're going to build new, these guidelines will come into effect.
Correct.
But that's not how they read right now.
Well, Sam, on page 22, they do have the setbacks on here for the R3 designation.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, Ernesto.
I do agree that, I read the document. I agree with Sam about how the guidelines are presented. As you read through, it would seem like this applies to, of course, new construction. There's no question about that. But it feels that this is also for anything else that you might be willing to do there. So that's number one. The other is the one that I quickly went to see and check was the setbacks, because it makes reference to R3 under the new UDO, and that is the side setbacks. The current UDO is based on a lot that is 50 feet wide. And if you, in this case, in the near west side, you have a lot that is under that number, there is a small clause that says that you can reduce the side setback to 4 feet instead of 6 feet. The same for as you go up, if you add another story, the UDO wants you to do 10 feet. And you can reduce that too to 2 feet. One of the things that the UDO lacks is that there is no clear definition when you have a story and a half. What happens when you have that condition? What do you do? It's not a full story, it's half a story. But in this case, for the near west side, the farther you go to the west, the lots get narrower and narrower and narrower. So it was going to be very hard to find those 50-foot wide lots. For the most part are 40s, even 32s. So there's a lot of those that doesn't comply with that. So it's very helpful to add a note here that the side setback should have that clause too. When you are under 50 feet, because you see, it makes reference to that UDO that we're talking about. So what happens when that changes, right? So either they establish their own setbacks and knowing that, you know, a good number of their lots are very narrow. So what the UDO proposes, it doesn't fit with this. So it's just I feel that that's very important. Those setbacks. It doesn't talk about also that you have to align to the rest of the houses that are on a median block, so that you're not too far back or too much to the front. Anyway, I just want to make sure that that's taking a note of that on the side setback.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's John. I think, and I don't know how everybody else feels, but maybe we should just revisit this at our next meeting and give an opportunity for the comments to be sent over to Connor, and then we'll move from there. Deb?
Just a comment to answer some queries there, that this is just a conservation district, which would only apply to new construction, however that came about. And Connor can correct me if my impression is incorrect, but my impression of the group coming up with the design, with the guidelines, they knew that about conservation district, but they knew that in the time before a vote for historic district would come about, there would be people who would be doing additions and adjustments to their homes. And therefore they wanted to put some guidelines in that if someone looked and said, I don't have to, but if I'm going to do new siding, new door, new front, new fence, whatever, they would have a few guidelines. It couldn't be controlled, but it would be there as a gentle guideline for people in the meantime before a historic district could or would come about. Connor?
That's exactly right, Deb. And, I initially resisted that idea. I kept repeating that, like what Sam was saying, this is a conservation district. We're only looking at new construction. But the more they talked about that, I thought, it made sense and it wouldn't hurt to put in the guidelines.
It needs to be clear in the guidelines that that's the case then.
And how so, Jeff?
Spelled out at the beginning that there are two different sets of commentary in these guidelines. It says, one, these are the required items, and two, these are what we'd like to see.
Also, I think it can be that you're anticipating the elevation of a conservation district to an historic district.
Part of it.
And that it makes some sense to, do your work beforehand. But I also agree with Jeff in that if it's a conservation district and no existing construction guidelines apply, then that I do agree that's got to be clarified.
So the only thing I'm missing from this conversation, and I understand what you're saying, is maybe after the meeting, you guys can let me know this section, doesn't belong in new construction, because I'm just hearing a lot of vagary, and I'd like some concrete things to work with.
That's
right.
what I would told you I would do.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Karen Duffy has a question.
Yeah, I just have a comment that we did use the language. The two verbs we used were required. These things are required, and these other things are recommended. And we thought we made the distinction clearly to the neighborhood, but we did want to give them some guidance of what kinds of things were more appropriate if they are putting up a fence or doing a porch or.
Okay, yeah, the whole format is just recommended and not recommended. That's the way.
That's right.
I guess I'm thinking of more like a forward that says that as you're delving into the guidelines, that it's clear, that's the case.
Okay.
Right. New construction needs required some things, and the rest are recommended for additions, adjustments in the context of conservation district. I think that's a good idea, Jeff. Yeah.
Maybe a simple fix, but we do need a little more time.
Thank you, Chris. All right. We'll just bring it up at our next meeting. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to Old business, we don't have anything. How about some commissioner comments?
Yeah, my only comment is the zoning change is going to be radical. And it's going to go into the single family west side core neighborhoods in a way that the public generally did not approve of. And that will go to Plan Commission and go to council. And will it be on Zoom? Will anybody notice? You know, that I just wanted to say it affects our historic neighborhoods.
Thank you, Chris. Any more comments?
Yeah, I have one. It's more about just putting some feelers out. So I've been talking to Steve Wyatt around the property on Smith Avenue and Prospect Hill. And they're having some issues. They have money allocated and they're ready to move ahead on this house, which is in serious disrepair. It at least has a new roof now. And so what Steve is asking is he's had a couple bids for the interior part, not particularly mechanicals, but drywall and framing of the interior of the house. He's had two bids that were very high, and it just won't work with their budget. So if you guys have any ideas around that, if you think of somebody that maybe understands the mission, is willing to work with, with BRI to make that a more affordable project, because they want to make it an affordable housing project. You can forward that information to me or to Steve.
So Jeff, I've been there. That property needs a lot of work done to it. Gosh, I'm not sure where we could find some contractors that can come up and do some stuff for us.
Right. And that's the difficult thing that what's going on now is not only are they in high demand, materials are through the roof.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just looking for ideas. I don't have a good answer to this question.
Yeah, I don't know.
All the neighbors want that house to be done.
Yeah, I know.
I'll take a look and see if we can help any, but it's hard to work for free, and we do want to be realistic about what can be done, but I haven't given an estimate or looked at it in that way yet. I was hoping I wouldn't have to.
Well, you are in the neighborhood, Chris.
Yeah, for the good of your marketability of your property.
Yeah, and you do have some neighbors that might even throw in some extra help.
I hear it.
All right, great. Do we have any public comments? All right. We don't have any announcements, so let's go to adjournment.